The year is 1917. The ground beneath your feet trembles as artillery shells whistle overhead, their deadly symphony punctuating the dawn air with explosive crescendos. You clutch a leather medical bag in one hand and a stretcher handle in the other, your uniform already stained with the evidence of yesterday's carnage. The acrid smell of cordite mingles with something far worse, something that makes your stomach churn even after months of exposure. You're not here to kill, you're here to heal, but in the hellscape of the Great War, that distinction might be the most dangerous job of all. Welcome to the most brutal test of human endurance and compassion ever devised by warfare. Today we're asking a simple question that demands a complex answer. Could you survive as a World War I field medic? Could you function when the very ground you walk on is saturated with blood? Could you make life or death decisions while shells explode around you, when every instinct screams at you to run, to hide, to preserve your own life above all others? The statistics alone should give you pause. Of the hundreds of thousands of medical personnel who served during the Great War, nearly 1 in 10 would never return home, not because they carried rifles into battle, but because they carried hope into hell. They ran toward the screaming, toward the explosions, toward the places where death held dominion, and they did it again and again, day after day, for 4 long years. But before we dive into the blood-soaked trenches and makeshift operating theatres, we need to understand what you're truly signing up for. This isn't about whether you could handle the sight of blood or stomach the smell of gangrene. This is about whether your mind could endure the constant weight of impossible choices, whether your hands could stay steady when a 19-year-old boy begs you to save his legs, while artillery fire tears the earth apart around you, whether your soul could bear the burden of those you couldn't save. The morning alarm isn't a gentle awakening from peaceful dreams. It's the thunder of enemy guns beginning their daily bombardment, the screams of men already wounded, and the desperate calls for medical assistance echoing across the torn landscape. You stumble from whatever shelter you manage to find, your body already aching from yesterday's marathon of horror. Your medical bag feels heavier each morning, not because of its contents, but because of the weight of expectation it carries. As you emerge into the grey dawn light, the scene before you defies description. The battlefield stretches out like a moonscape, cratered and scarred, dotted with the debris of war. But it's not the twisted metal or shattered wood that catches your attention. It's the human wreckage scattered across this desolate expanse, bodies twisted in unnatural positions, some moving weakly, others ominously still, and somewhere among them are the living, the ones you might be able to save if you can reach them in time. Your first challenge isn't medical knowledge or surgical skill. It's simply staying alive long enough to help someone else do the same. Every step across no man's land is a gamble with death. Snipers peer through telescopic sights, searching for targets. Artillery observers call in coordinates on anything that moves. Machine gun nests sweep the terrain with methodical precision. And you, marked clearly as a non-combatant by the red cross on your arm, must navigate this killing field armed with nothing but bandages and morphine. The sound hits you first when you reach your first casualty, not the explosion or the gunfire, but the crying. Grown men reduced to children by pain and fear, calling for their mothers, begging for help, pleading for the nightmare to end. A sergeant lies twisted against a shell crater, his leg bent at an impossible angle, bone protruding through torn fabric. His eyes find yours, wild with pain and desperation. This is your moment of truth. Can you function when confronted with suffering beyond imagination? Your hands shake as you open your medical bag, muscle memory fighting against the shock of witnessing such devastation. The sergeant grabs your wrist with surprising strength, his grip desperate and demanding. He doesn't speak, but his eyes communicate everything. Save me! Don't let me die here. Don't let this be how my story ends. The weight of that responsibility settles on your shoulders like a lead blanket. But there's no time for hesitation. Behind you, more voices call out. More men need help. The sergeant's injury is severe, but not immediately life-threatening if you can stop the bleeding and stabilize the break. 50 yards away, another soldier lies motionless, and you can't tell if he's unconscious or dead. Beyond him, a group of men huddle in a crater, one of them waving frantically in your direction. This is triage. This is the cruel mathematics of battlefield medicine. Who gets help first? Who might survive with immediate attention? Who is beyond saving? These aren't medical questions, they're moral ones. They're the kind of decisions that will follow you home long after the war ends, that will wake you in cold sweats decades later. You work on the sergeant, applying a tourniquet with hands that somehow remember their training despite the chaos surrounding you. His breathing steadies slightly as the morphine takes effect, but his eyes never leave your face. He's searching for reassurance, for some sign that he's going to make it through this. You want to give him that comfort, but honesty and hope wage war in your mind. You've seen too many men with similar injuries who didn't survive the journey back to the field hospital. A shell lands close enough to shower you with dirt and debris. The sergeant flinches, crying out as the movement aggravates his injury. You shield him instinctively with your body, feeling fragments of metal and stone pepper your back. When the dust settles, you realize you're both still alive, but the explosion has revealed new casualties. Men who were sheltering nearby and are now exposed, wounded, calling for help. The morning is just beginning, and already you face more suffering than most people witness in a lifetime. Your uniform is soaked with sweat and blood, your hands cramped from gripping medical instruments, your mind reeling from the constant assault of human misery. And this is just the start. The day stretches ahead of you, promising more difficult choices, more impossible situations, more moments when someone's life hangs in the balance based on your decisions and your skill. The weight of the stretcher cuts into your shoulders as you and your partner navigate the treacherous terrain back toward the field hospital. Each step is agony, not just from the physical strain, but from the knowledge that every jolt and stumble might worsen the condition of the man you're carrying. His breathing comes in shallow gasps, each one a small victory against the inevitable. You've managed to stabilize 3 casualties so far, but the day has barely begun, and already your morphine supply is running dangerously low. Behind you, the artillery barrage intensifies. The Germans have spotted movements in your sector, and their gunners are methodically walking their fire across the battlefield. You can hear the shells getting closer, that distinctive whistle that makes every muscle in your body tense with anticipation. Your partner stumbles, nearly dropping his end of the stretcher. The wounded man groans, his eyes fluttering open for a moment before consciousness abandons him again. You reach the relative safety of a communication trench, but safety is a relative term when high explosive shells can collapse earthworks in seconds. The walls are lined with wounded men waiting for evacuation, some sitting upright and alert, others lying motionless on blood-stained stretchers. A corporal with a bandaged head waves you over, pointing to a space barely wide enough for your casualty. The mathematics of survival play out in cubic feet of trench space. As you settle your patient among the others, you catch fragments of conversation that paint a grim picture of the morning's action. The attack that began at dawn has stalled. 3 companies went over the top, and less than half made it back to their own lines. The field hospital is already overwhelmed, and more casualties are streaming in every minute. A runner appears at your elbow, mud-caked and breathless, with new orders. 2 more medics have been hit. You're needed at the forward aid station immediately. The forward aid station exists in a state of controlled chaos that would break lesser minds. What was once a German bunker has been hastily converted into a medical facility, its concrete walls providing some protection from shell fragments, but no comfort from the human suffering contained within. The floor is slick with blood despite constant mopping. The air hangs thick with the metallic smell of gore and the acrid bite of antiseptic, fighting a losing battle against infection. Dr. Morrison, the senior medical officer, looks up from a surgery that's more butchery than medicine. His hands are stained crimson to the wrists, his face drawn with exhaustion that goes beyond physical fatigue. He's been working for 18 hours straight, snatching moments of rest between waves of casualties. His eyes meet yours across the crowded space, and you see something that chills you more than any artillery barrage. You see a man who has witnessed too much, who has made too many impossible choices, who carries the weight of every life he couldn't save. A private is brought in screaming, his abdomen torn open by shrapnel. The wound is catastrophic, organs visible through the ragged opening in his flesh. Dr. Morrison takes one look and shakes his head, almost imperceptibly. The boy is 19, maybe 20, with fair hair matted with sweat and blood. He keeps calling for someone named Sarah, probably a sweetheart back home who will never see him again. Your job is to make him comfortable, to ease his passage with whatever morphine you can spare. But morphine is precious, and there are other men who might survive with proper treatment. The terrible calculus of battlefield medicine forces you to weigh one life against another. To play God with pharmaceutical resources, the private grabs your hand with surprising strength, his eyes wide with terror and pain. He knows he's dying, but he's fighting it with every fibre of his being. The human will to survive is both inspiring and heartbreaking when you know that will alone isn't enough. You administer a small dose of morphine, enough to dull the worst of his agony, but not enough to waste precious medication that might save someone else. It's a compromise that satisfies no one, least of all your conscience. The boy's grip on your hand gradually loosens as the drug takes effect, his breathing becoming more laboured. You stay with him because no one should die alone, even in this place where death is as common as mud. Meanwhile, the stream of casualties never stops. A sergeant with a sucking chest wound who needs immediate surgery, a lieutenant with both legs mangled by a mine who keeps asking if he'll be able to dance at his wedding, a boy who looks barely 16 with burns across half his face from a flamethrower attack. Each case presents its own moral dilemma, its own impossible choice between competing needs and limited resources. The psychological toll begins to manifest in subtle ways. Your hands develop a tremor that wasn't there yesterday. You find yourself speaking more quietly, as if raising your voice might somehow attract more suffering. Sleep, when it comes at all, brings nightmares populated by the faces of men you couldn't save. Food tastes like ash, and simple pleasures, like a letter from home, seem to belong to someone else's life. Dr. Morrison assigns you to assist with a complex surgery. A captain has taken shrapnel to the spine, and without immediate intervention, he'll be paralysed for life. The operation requires steady hands and absolute concentration, while shells continue to fall outside. The patient is conscious, local anaesthetic being all that's available, and he watches your every move with eyes that demand competence you're not sure you possess. The surgery becomes a race against time and circumstance. Every few minutes, a nearby explosion shakes dust from the ceiling and threatens to compromise the sterile field. Your patient grips the sides of the makeshift operating table, his knuckles white with effort as he fights to remain still. Sweat drips from your forehead despite the underground chill, each drop a potential contaminant that could doom the man to infection and death. As you work, you become aware of a new sound filtering through the constant background noise of warfare. It's singing, barely audible above the artillery, coming from somewhere deeper in the bunker. Wounded men, some perhaps dying, have begun a hymn. Their voices, cracked and weak, rise and fall with the melody of "Abide with Me," transforming the concrete tomb into something approaching a cathedral. So could you survive as a World War I field medic? The honest answer is that most people, regardless of their courage or compassion, would be broken by the relentless horror of it all. The physical demands alone would crush many, but it's the psychological weight that truly destroys. The constant parade of suffering, the impossible choices, the faces of those you couldn't save haunting your dreams for decades to come. But here's what's remarkable about those who did serve. They weren't superhuman. They weren't specially bred for this nightmare. They were ordinary people who found extraordinary strength when it mattered most. Farmers and clerks, teachers and students thrust into situations that would challenge the limits of human endurance. And somehow, many of them persevered. They carried on when every instinct screamed at them to stop, because someone had to. The medics of the Great War saved hundreds of thousands of lives, not through miraculous medicine or advanced technology, but through sheer determination and an unshakable belief in the value of human life. They proved that even in the darkest moments of human history, compassion can triumph over cruelty, hope can survive in hell, and ordinary people can do extraordinary things when the stakes demand nothing less. The question isn't really whether you could survive, it's whether, when faced with unimaginable suffering, you would have the courage to try.